Got it. Live stream. Yep. I'm actually sharing my screen, but I couldn't get. Well, just hang on.
All good. We are live. We are live.
Hi. Yep. Got it. Cool. Let me go back. It won't get me. They give me control. Okay. Doesn't matter. Hi everyone. This is KJ Wong here from Awake by 5 a.m. and I'm very excited to be presenting to you about mastering the psychology of sales. And certainly earlier in the interview, I talk about introverts being able to sell much better than or as well as the extrovert. But certainly this particular workshop, I would like to talk to you guys about how to do that in terms of selling in itself. And the key thing about selling before I start is the psychology behind it. And that is key to everything. We talk about mindset in this conference, in this summit, and a lot of areas that we touch on tends to be in the mind side of things. And when it comes to selling, it is definitely core to how you sell to others and the belief system that you carry with yourself. And that's why I talk about the psychology of selling. And we need all to be very comfortable about this particular thing that we have to do when we are trying to grow our business. Anyway, before I start, certainly you can see that it's a QR code there. That is, if you actually wave your phone on that, that is actually gonna bring you to my LinkedIn profile, and you can certainly connect with me. I love connection, I love networking, and that is predominantly what selling is all about. It's about building a very strong network within your community, and it is almost like building your own tribe. When it comes to social media, that is the way that we sell in social media environment. But certainly it is just one of the tools that we all use. Okay, firstly, let's talk about the definition of selling. And there is a lot of negative perception about selling. And that is unfortunate, because if you hear what the definition is, it just makes no sense why there is a negative perception in selling. To me, selling means it's an exchange of something for another thing that is mutually beneficial and valuable to all parties. Now, if you just stick to that definition and that's it, it just makes no sense why there's even a negative perception about selling. That is really the intent, and that is the definition. Selling is a life skill. It is a skill that you use to persuade other people to do something. You know, we always feel that selling is about a transaction of money. And you notice that when I say exchange of something for something else, it doesn't have the money component in it, because it is everything in life that you're trying to persuade someone to give you something or do something. And all that is actually selling. So we just have to bear in mind that when it comes to selling, it is about helping your client to solve some of the problems that they actually have. For you, you are providing solutions to solve their problems. And that is very important when it comes to selling. Now, let's go to the next one. So we need to understand why people buy in the first place. Well, if you understand the Maslow hierarchy of needs, as you can see, as you go further and further up the chain, you can realize that, like, you know, going from psychological, you know, just for survival, all the way to actualization at the top. And as people who are selling, we need to understand our client in terms of where they're at in the run. And if you think about it, there are many occasions, if you are a sales rep, you're faced with this, whereby your clients are just not ready to buy for whatever reason it is. It could be budgetary issues, it could be trust, it could be anything else. But the key thing is, if everything's on par at the higher end, if it gives them higher self-actualization, and it is something that will fit to their model, then convincing them or persuade them to actually purchase should not be that difficult. And the key thing is, it is all comes down to your sales skill. That is very important. We hear a lot of people talk about, you know, products walk off the shelf. No, not really. I don't believe in it, especially in the B2B environment. there's a lot of face-to-face meeting and things like that. And not only that, you're also facing with tenders. So for me, for my business, I do a lot of work with customers who focuses on B2B because they are very complex sales. That's why there's a lot of consideration at the top part of this prism in a hierarchy of needs of people. And we need to understand all this when we sell. So this is the question I often ask my class. So why do you want to learn how to sell? I see that there are some people, some audience, please, if I'm not sure how you check the message, but why do you think people need to learn how to sell? There are many reasons for that. And certainly, like, whether it is to get money, to survive and things like that, yeah, fine. But there are a lot of cases why the reason why you want to learn how to sell is because you want to find out a way to engage with clients, to help your client and give solutions to your client. People are sometimes very passionate about doing that, and great reps tend to be like that. And money is usually the second, or I would call it the side effect. If you do have that sort of attitude, I personally believe that you will become a great seller. But if you're going into it because you want to make a lot of money and that's all your intent is, what tends to happen is that energy actually will radiate out of yourself, and it will radiate out during the sales call, and it's becoming blatantly obvious that you're only in it for the money. However, if you change your mindset of why you're there in the first place in a sales call, everything changes. The way you converse with client changes, the question that you ask, the fact that you actually ask questions because you're actually genuinely interested in your client. So, it is very important to understand the reason for why you want to sell. And the next part is very challenging for most people, actually for a lot of people, is the question of why is selling so difficult? Like when we were young, right, we are never taught exactly how do we sell. Like no one actually said, hey, I'm going to teach you how to sell. It is not really something or in a curriculum for students or young people to do that. It's almost like they have to learn the art of persuasion through diffusion. And that is pretty sad because people struggle in life a lot of times is because they're not able to get what they want. They couldn't persuade other people to give them what they want. And that is a problem in our society today. And the other thing is, like, selling is about understanding other people. It's about asking questions, as I say, it's a lot of consultative. And can you imagine at a very young age that we are taught how to sell? We will be actually learning how to listen to the needs of our client or the people that they talk to. That is the core foundation of selling. And can you imagine that young kids are actually taught that skill? I think the world would be a much better place if everyone at a young age to be taught how to sell, even though it is like a really negative perception over the word selling, but the foundation, if they learn about the foundation of listening to understand, listening to help people, and listening to solve specific problems for individual people, I think the world would be a much better place at the end. So the question is often, so how do we engage with our client? Well, nowadays, there are so many ways. The traditional way, of course, as you're familiar with, is face-to-face, on the phone, and potentially email. For where my generation comes from as a salesperson, the major way for us to sell and engage a client is through the three major modes, right? So email, phone, and face-to-face. However, time is changing. There's social media in there, there's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. It is becoming very flooded and people are getting really confused. But there is one core thing when you actually step back about selling and engaging clients. When you look at all these things, there's something similar about that, is the fact that what works well and those who does well are the people actually, when they engage a client, is that affinity to want to know their client. If you're asking me how do you do that, well, the very first thing you need to think about, if you're not sure about selling, is are you really seriously interested in this client? Not client in general, not when you're actually putting together your target market or your customer persona. That is something that you have to do. But I'm talking about the person in front of you when you're conversing with them? What is it that within you that drive you talking to this person? Do you seriously, genuinely want to know about this person? If you're not, then I find it very difficult to start engaging with anyone, partly because it's only going to be about you. There are many occasions that you will see on LinkedIn, people post, especially myself, that when it comes to selling, when it comes to business, it is not about you. It is about the client. It's always about the client. So if you only say it, but do not know how to perform it or act on it, then you're still not going to be successful. When you're talking about it is about the client, it means that you want to know about the client. And you have to start there, mindset-wise anyway. When it comes to any selling practice, you have to be genuine and interested in your client. If you're not, we're playing a different game. So the question is, what are you actually selling? You know, a lot of people go straight into the product, of course, and companies, when they actually recruit any sales rep, from what I'm familiar with, that even some of the older companies that I worked in, their first point of call of training is often products. Yeah, products is extremely important because there's a lot of talks on popular publication and article that you need to know your product really well, otherwise you won't be able to convince your client. But that is only a third truth. It's only a third. What is important is about the sales skill. It's also about your account knowledge. And the most important thing is about your passion. These are the four things that are very important, that what makes, to me, of all the years I've trained for the last, I would say 13 years of training sales reps, the four things are very important and they make up a triangle. And I'll show you in later slides. These are very important as a sales rep and be successful in selling. But the thing is, the key thing about what you're really selling initially, when you actually first meet someone, is actually yourself. If you're not able to sell yourself as a person, it's really hard to persuade anybody to buy from you, because there's something called trust. And there's also something called trusted advisor. So in other words, over time in a conversation, and if you are very good with selling and able to help your client, over time, you get from being a transactional seller and then to become a kind of like a trusted advisor. And everyone loves to be at that level with the client, with all their clients, trusted advisor. And I'm sure that you have heard stories that some of these clients have become some of your best friends. In fact, I play golf with some of my customers. And until today, I have left the industry for 3 years now in the forensic market. I still play golf with those clients and they became my friends. So when I actually go into any industry and work with my clients, because of who I am and how interested I am in them as a person, we get along really well beyond just, you know, the selling component bit. We become really good friends and work together very closely after that. So that's why there is a lot of power in kind of like understanding how do you project yourself as someone that is, you know, trustworthy and someone who would listen and someone who would actually understand the client. That is key to that. You know, telling your client all the products, features, and benefits from the very front, actually not going to do that. It's not going to do that at all. And that's what called pitch. That's what pitching is. You know, people try to perfect their pitch, but they never try to perfect themselves in terms of asking questions, wanting to know about the customer. How do I know about the customer? Well, if you spend more time in perfecting that, then you will sell much better than trying to pitch all the time. Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure that some of your audience have faced this on LinkedIn and all that. All these pitches that you receive from direct message, seriously, to be honest, not once I clicked to be interested, not once. And that is the key to selling yourself. You need to be able to do that. So if you are not able to get people to listen to you, right? How do you expect to help anyone? You know, everyone tells me, right? When I meet someone, like, and they're starting a business, and I say, so what is really, you know, what you're passionate about? They say, my passion is to help people blah and blah, like, you know, certain things. But the thing is, they never actually spend the time to work on their sales skill, and then they start telling me all this stuff, but never even once asked me who their audience is, which is me at the time. And I kind of stopped listening. I switch off. I tend to switch off because they just went and talk and talk and talk. And I always ask myself this question, like even within myself, I say, well, I already switch off after 5 minutes. Like actually 5 minutes is giving you quite a lot. I'll switch off after 30 seconds when I realize all you're trying to do is to push something, right? Being very aggressive about something, even though they think they're not, but they were. How do you plan to help anyone? Because I'm not listening. So if you go gung-ho on your passion, your product, your features and everything, like the moment you sit down with the client, they're not going to listen to you because there is really no interest. And the majority of clients will do that. And it is very demotivating for the sales rep because they're not sure exactly what they're doing wrong. And so instead of learning how to listen to people, okay, can I work out how to ask questions instead? They keep on focusing on the pitching bit and trying to perfect what they say continuously and neglect the questioning bit. And it is a shame. And this is why I hop onto LinkedIn every day, trying to persuade existing salespeople and new salespeople and old salespeople that we need to stop doing that. And we need to actually work out how do we ask the right questions? How do we inquire all the information that we need from our clients from off the bat, right? From off the bat, whatever industry you're in. And if you do more of that, then the client will start thinking, okay, you are interested in myself, my business, and also some of the challenges I have, instead of interested in my money, because that's what people feel if you do it wrong. Okay, well, today, earlier in the interview, I talk about introverts, extrovert, and then we touch on ambivert. A lot of people knows what introvert is. They know what extrovert is. It's very polar, right? It's one or the other, but they struggle to define themselves where they're at in terms of the scale. So about 3 years ago, someone told me and introduced me to a word called ambivert. And what that is someone who is in the middle, who is quiet sometimes, but if they need to talk, they will talk. So they're not afraid. They have the courage to present and go back to being quiet when the time comes. So they know the timing of when to say things and when not to say things. They're not overly shy and they're not overly, extroverted in terms of like very open either. So they're somewhere in the middle. Now, for me, when I started in my career, prior to me starting my career, I was quite an introvert. I'm quite shy. And most of the time it's partly because of my English, my accent. I'm not very good at expressing myself because of it. So I tend to be a bit more reserved because of that. However, over time, because of my sales role, and there's a reason why I decided to pick the sales role, is to deliberately move myself away from being an introvert shy guy to become more of a balanced person to the other side. I'm not an extrovert. I hate attention still. However, having said that, I become an ambivert because of need. So I evolve. It's not that I'm no longer an introvert, but when I have to do a job, if it's related to my career, I need to actually become ambivert and actually do what I do right now and talk to you guys. And there is a belief that, as I spoke earlier, there's a belief that only extroverted people can sell. And that is so far from the truth. There are more successful introverts, ambiverts, salespeople than purely extroverted salespeople. And the reason for that is because the extrovert people talk too much and they don't usually listen. However, having said that, when that doesn't stop people from evolving. People evolve. If you say to me that I'm forever extrovert and that's that, well, you know what? It simply means that you're saying to me that you stop learning. And that is not true. And that is seriously something wrong with that. We always need to learn and we always need to be open to learning new skills. And so I have a combination of introverted staff, extroverted staff, and ambiverted staff, and they shift depending on situation as well. So if you understand yourself where you sit, you can start adjusting your method and your mindset depending on who you are. And that's why it is very important to be very familiar with the characteristics of these three different modes. So in terms of listening, when I talk about the foundation of selling, the foundation of selling often focus around listening. You have heard about hearing. So that's when you just hear someone, but you're not really recepting anything. And then the next level of listening is when you are actually paying attention. So you are listening. And when I ask my students, do they know what active listening is? They all say yes. However, when it comes to implementation of selling to me in a role play, 95% fail miserably. Even though they know what active listening is, in terms of interpretation, in terms of meaning from Google, they couldn't apply it in a sales call, partly because I guess that they don't know what they don't know. And that's fair. You notice that active, the word is active, right? It's not that you have to pay attention a lot. The listening bit is technically means that you are paying attention in the present time. But the active listening is two parts. You are listening, but you have to be active. Means you gotta have to talk. You gotta have to say something. And whatever you say something, to me, if you're good at selling, it actually comes out as a form of question. And so if you're doing active listening, it is about you trying to ask more questions to further understand the customer in a deeper level. That's why it's called active listening. It's active. You have to participate in the conversation, not just listening passively. So that's why when it comes to selling, true selling, we need to understand what active listening is and how to apply it in a sales situation. That is very important in this, in what we actually teach. So you have heard a few times about, asking a lot of questions, asking questions, good questions. When I first started as a rep, I asked my sales manager, what do I do in front of customers? I'm so shy, I don't know what to say. And my manager said to me, just ask questions, but he never defined exactly what questions. So that left me in a bit of a lurch. So I asked questions, but it became very random. It is a good foundation to if you're genuinely interested in your client, what tends to happen is you are interested. So whatever the client say, if you are interested, even in a party, let's say, let's take that as an example. That's a common thing that everyone does. When someone introduces you to someone else, and then of course the normal thing you do is, or you say or ask is, so what do you do? And then they say they do something, I don't know, they do medicine, for example. And then most people will go, oh, okay, medicine, which hospital, or this, and this, they say somewhere. And they go, and then that's it. That was the conversation for most people. That is because of the lack of interest in the other person, to be honest. You feel yourself doing it sometimes. You can replay those events over and over again, that this is something that most people do. However, if you actually go, other than going beyond the hospital thing and ask them why they do what they do, right? For example, then they actually start telling you why. And then when you're listening to all that, then you kind of go, okay, well, I need to know more of the reasons. And so you actually ask more questions and what inspires them to do that? What are the challenges? And so you actually start moving into a flow, and the conversation actually go beyond the initial of what do you do, all the way to an understanding of the actual passion that goes back to God knows how long when he was young, and how it affected people around them, and also who is actually involved and helped them. And so this is where a good conversationalist do. They actually somehow politely guide the person out, all the information out, to help them have a decent conversation. And that is what great selling is. However, if all you ever do is, if someone say, I'm a doctor, and say, oh yeah, I'm a dentist, and then just start talking about your life, well, that's not really a good conversation at the end, because again, it's all about you. Well, when you go from the party to become into a sales call, the principle remains exactly the same. You might ask what the person do, what their role, what are their title. I hope that you know that before you even go into the meeting. But if you ask those questions, if you go beyond that and then start ripping into your product, then you straight away know that you're going to be in a lot of trouble, and the quality of the sales call will be very weak. You need to also understand the difference between open-ended question and closed-ended question in a sales call. A lot of people, from my training, when I train people, they always go with the closed-ended question, the yes and no, one or two. Not to say that there's something wrong with closed-ended questions. You just have to remember the difference between the two. Open-ended question is to open up the conversation, so it's quite broad. Closed-ended question is normally used to confirm, so that you need to know whether what you're thinking is kind of like in line with the customers. So in a conversation, when it's kind of like if you want it to flow, you can't just use open-ended questions forever, and you also can't use closed-ended question forever. Good conversationalists in a sales call use a combination of both in a tactful manner, in a strategic manner. And so if you can do that, you'll be able to guide the customers towards you and give you all the information that you require to make a decision on what solution or customer solution that you can come up with and give it back to the client and make those recommendations. At the end of the day, in a single sales call, that is often the objective.
KJ, I will interrupt you a little bit because we had so many questions. So maybe if it would be good to answer some of the questions. I sent it to you all, but we can go one by one if you want.
Yeah, sure. Andrea, I couldn't see the chat while I'm on my screen. So if you
no
can
problem. So I will read out the questions in order. So it's coming from Uduma. So the first question is, where do we place marketing so we can sell without appearing intrusive or disparate?
Well, marketing and selling are two very important part of, I guess, making money for the business, right? And so they all both have to work hand in hand. Now, intrusive is when it is like you're constantly badgering the client, okay? And it depends on what platform you're talking about as well. Like, if you're talking about, look, I'm gonna be honest with you, my focus is LinkedIn. So beyond that, LinkedIn, I'm not gonna actually discuss that. On LinkedIn, when you're constantly pushing and things like that, normally either in a post or it could be in a direct message. Well, the way you write in the direct message is very different to the way you write in the marketing. Now, in marketing, from what I understand, I'm not a marketing person, by the way, so please, I'm not gonna kind of focus too much on that. Certainly, what is important to me when it comes to marketing is to actually elicit some form of emotional response from your client at the end of the day. All right. So if you feel that all your marketing effort doesn't do that, well, yeah, it doesn't do that. Simple. Like you couldn't do it. And the second important thing about marketing is elicit a call to action. Means that once it actually triggers an emotion, then it needs to have somewhere in there that give you allow the client to have an action. So make them want to do something with it. And past that point, it will be a conversation, right? So whether it is direct message from there or having a Zoom meeting, then this is where the sales skill comes in. So by the time the client actually are interested and actually message you that they're interested, which is what I normally get on LinkedIn, then a conversation tend to happen from there. And technically they really know what you're doing. Otherwise, why would they message you? And secondly, if they message you, they have a problem already that they want to share with you and hoping that you might be able to help them. So that is the difference between how I use direct message versus a lot of people. And also the DM that I actually receive, it's all pitch, which to me is, for me, I usually ignore them. I hope that answered the question in a long-winded way.
Yeah, we will talk to Udumna a little bit later after I stop the live stream, but let's go with the further questions. So there's a comment from Angela. Interesting. I may have found myself ambivert. So
good. Fantastic.
And then we have another question. How can a fresh entrepreneur understand the problems of a client and convince the individual he can render a solution?
Cool. So how? Well, there needs to be a conversation. Let's focus on the sales call. So you have a client in front of you right now. You have to learn how to ask questions because if you don't know how to do that and you don't have anything in you to want to know that, then it is really hard to have a solution, isn't it? Because you do not know really the core problem. The problem with a lot of this marketing and then the selling and all these things that I'm seeing, the noise, right? The noise is that they're giving all the different features and benefits with no understanding of the specific problem that this customer has. The only way you do that with no assumption is to ask. the key thing is no assumptions, right? So you have to ask yourself, how can I understand this client with no assumptions? If you can do that without asking any questions, please come to me and tell me how you do that. Because from what I understand, the only way to understand a client's problem with no assumption is to ask questions. And that's the only way to go for me. And even when a client comes to me or direct message me with a problem, I still want to ask more questions because I cannot assume my own perception with just one liner. You know, for example, I have some issue with my sales team. I'm not going to tell them all the stuff I offer because all the stuff I offer may not be relevant to the client. I would actually, or the prospect, I would actually ask, let's have a chat. Let's talk about your problem and expand on that. And I want to know exactly, you know, some of the key things. It could be multiple problems. I don't know. But the key thing to answer your, you know, this person's question is ask. That's it.
Perfect. We are heading towards the end of the question. So there is one more, which is about what are the right questions to ask in a conversation that would help a client open up without feeling being prone?
Cool. So there's a difference between genuinely interested in the client and just being an interrogator like an FBI agent. Okay, there is a difference between the two. When you know the use of the open-ended questions as well as closed-ended questions, and you are actually working towards the conversation and listening to all the words acutely and being in present mode, then what you can do is you actually flow the question based on what they say. It is a bit of an art to do that. And it is, you know, a workshop like this today in half an hour will not solve it. I can tell you that to really know what question to ask, how do you flow this conversation? It took me 6 months seeing about 10 people a day. All right. So it took me 6 months to get over something called the hump. The hump. My boss always said that's a hump for a newbie all the way to become someone who actually just realizing what to do. 6 months. And I see between 5 to 10 people every day, right? And so like if you only talk to a customer one a day, then you're going to have to multiply 6 months to 5 times because that is the number of frequency that you have to go through to realize what sort of questions, how to ask it, when to ask it, and what are the best ways to ensure your customers are in a safe space as well as comfortable to answer those questions for you.
Perfect. I believe that that's so good, and the group is so active that I will just stop the live stream now, and then I believe, I don't know whether you have something to say still for the audience live, if you want to finish up in a few minutes.
Yep, I can finish up very quickly. A great sales call should not feel like a sales call, and that answered your previous question. It needs to flow, and that is really important. Look, when it comes to selling, everyone thought that, you know, turning up today, they will become an amazing seller. Sorry to hear that. Even when I train someone and they pay good money, it will still take them 6 months to actually apply it. Okay, that's the truth of it. And that is with me. Okay, working together with me for the next 6 months, and they actually have to do it. The key thing is they actually have to do it both in role play and in life. They have to do it. So that is very important. Repetition is key to learning how to sell. Oh, by the way, I mentioned if you really want to understand what makes a great salesperson, these are the 4 areas that when I recruit, I actually cover 4 of these. I actually work with my clients. I help my client recruit sales rep, and we work through this prism. So all the questions branches out of this prism, and that's how we recruit high-performing sales reps. So you have to, when it comes to selling, there are 3 areas. You either satisfy your customer needs in a conversation, or you're just kind of like replacing something, or it is something that you will able to improve the customer competitive advantage. Always move towards the right, because at the end of the day, if you're talking about value adding, you're helping the client in a B2B environment. You're helping the client to have a competitive advantage over their competitors. And that is what solution you should be thinking about and provide. And the if you're thinking like that, it changes the whole conversation in your sales call. These are all the skills. I'm not going to go into details about them. These are all the soft skills when it comes to selling. If you are working towards improving all those, these are the key areas that I would really suggest that you work on. If you want to message me, if you're struggling in any of those, you are more than welcome to contact me about those. And then again, conversations so that you don't feel like an interrogator. Well, these are the key areas that you guys really need to get right. And of course, the most important thing is active listening and eventually the actual flow of the conversation. Confidence takes time to build, even if you're new to sales, and that's the reality of it. The most important thing is in any sales call is to be thorough and have the right attitude. These are very important. Make sure you actually start looking into yourself about that. When you actually do work with me, this is the sales technique that I use. It's called the Align, ALIIGN, and it represents something. And so this is just a quick overview of what you've been learning from me. And I walk you through all these key areas, including lead generation, all the way to closing a sale. And so certainly this workflow guides you whenever you actually speak to any client. And so I would suggest that if you really want to know more about this skill, please contact me and get in touch with me either through LinkedIn or email me. There is a difference between sales technique and sales process. I'm not going to go into it at all. I hope that you understand the difference between the two. If you don't, ask me, message me. And that is it. That is predominantly just to give you an overview of how to master the psychology of selling. All in the mind.
That's beautiful. So for all of those who are listening, I put the LinkedIn link into the YouTube. So you will find KJ's LinkedIn link, or you can read the QR code, or you can go straight away to the address here, what you see in front of you, or you can straight away call, because he is also openly sharing his phone number. So please and call KJ as soon as you can.
I'm in Australia, so it's the +61 at the front and drop the 0. But the easiest way to contact me is on LinkedIn. Just wave your phone LinkedIn app over this QR code and you'll find me.
Perfect. So I'm stopping the live stream now. So thank you very much for everyone watching on YouTube. And now we are getting back to the room to those who made the effort and they are there for themselves and they want to interact with KJ live.